Welcome to SROA Soundboard, a podcast for radiation oncology administrators. Here's your host, Tammy McCausland.
Hi, I'm joined today by Karen Dean, a resilience expert, best-selling author, and inspirational speaker from Nova Scotia, Canada. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks for joining me. I'd like to start with you sharing your personal experience with cancer.
My experience with cancer happened in 2020 during the height of COVID. My son, who was 19 at the time, was diagnosed with a rare and aggressive form of lymphoma, primary mediastinal large B-cell lymphoma, to be specific. And because he was 19 and considered an adult in the medical system, which anyone who has a 19-year-old boy in their life would know that they are not really adults, I wasn't allowed to go in the hospital with him for any of his treatments. And I found that really difficult as a caregiver and his only parent to kind of navigate that, where I knew he didn't really know how to advocate for himself, didn't really know how to answer questions from the medical professionals. And it was just really challenging. And I think what I learned that I didn't know until I experienced it was that the trauma on the caregiver is sometimes, well, it's definitely different, but sometimes feels like even more than the trauma on the patient. In my son's case, that's how I felt, because he left all of the responsibility to me. He did not take any ownership of anything, of making appointments, of his own treatment, his own care at home, nothing. He removed himself from it and said, "Mom, you handle it." And I think you just go to look after the person who's sick, but you don't look after yourself, is the case with a lot of caregivers. And that was definitely my experience. So I'm happy that he's in remission now and he's doing really well. But I found almost the day that he finished his treatment was the day that my trauma hit me, because then you wait. And then it's this unknown of, did it work? Is it going to come back? We have to wait 6 to 9 months to even find out if the treatment was successful. And it's hard as a caregiver and a mom to kind of just sit there and wonder. And then, of course, I was completely burned out from going on adrenaline for so long. And it took me about 2 years to recover from my son having cancer. And he will tell everybody that Mom took it worse than I did.
I'm glad he's in remission, and I'm glad that I would say you're probably in remission now, too, from the trauma.
Yes.
Did the experience of taking care of him and navigating his cancer journey kind of pivot you into this career you now have of being a resilience expert?
Actually, that started a long time ago. I named myself a resilience expert in 2019. Decided that I was going to give up my job and start a career as a speaker, an advocate for people, try to inspire people that, life can be really crappy, but it can also be really amazing at the same time. So then, of course, that career got stalled because the pandemic happened and my son got sick. And, I kind of had to press pause for a while. But I think I've always considered myself a resilience expert. I've gone through a lot in my life that was really hard. And I've always been the person people came to say, to kind of spill everything and get my advice on how to move forward. So I just wasn't always paid to do it. And in 2019, I decided, you know what? I think I was put here on this earth to help more people. So, I'm going to start this business so that I can make a bigger impact and find more people. And that's my goal since 2019.
What sets you and your approach apart from other people who may speak about resilience?
A lot of people talk about resilience from a theoretical standpoint, things they've studied, like a lot of psychologists talk about resilience because they've studied it and they've learned it through a book. But my approach is different because it's based on my real lived experience. I've had to be resilient. I didn't have a choice. Surviving some of the hardest things that life can throw at a person. I'm a domestic violence survivor. I'm estranged from my entire family. My ex-husband, I found out that he had been sexually assaulting a teenage girl. That's why we got divorced. So that led to me completely solo parenting my kids. Like I said, through the cancer diagnosis, my daughter was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis when she was 15, had a lung collapse when she was 14, and I did all this by myself. Plus, in 2018, I was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disease that causes me a lot of health issues. And in between all of that, I was building a business. So I don't just talk about resilience because it's a fun subject to talk about. It's because I've lived it. And I don't teach, kind of the fluff, feel good concepts. I teach stuff that's really worked for me to get through the hard things. And I also talk about how we don't always see resilience as what it really is. People think it's to bounce back. But I don't believe that you ever go back to who you were before you had that hard experience. You get stronger, you develop more tools because of the hard experience. So I always say that my talks are raw, real, relatable, real world tested theories, not just speaking from what I learned in a book.
What does being resilient mean to you?
Like I said, it's not just bouncing back. It's about taking those experiences and learning a lesson from them and learning how to get stronger. So I find if you handle one hard thing, then the next hard thing doesn't seem as scary. Resilience isn't just bouncing back, but it's about growing. It's about moving forward, and it's about making sure that you equip yourself with the tools, which we all actually have. Sometimes we just don't believe we are resilient, but we all are. It's just about finding the strength inside of us to get through the hard thing so that the next hard thing is a little bit easier. And the next hard thing is even easier. And it's all about mindset and protecting our own energy and our mental health.
That's great. Can you share some strategies our listeners could use to become more resilient?
For sure. In my talks that I do and in my coaching, I kind of focus on 8 different tools. So I'll briefly go over a few of them. And they sound really simple, but you really have to be conscious of them. So the first thing I tell people when they encounter something hard or chaotic is to breathe. Because if you think about it, when we get scared, upset, mad, we tend to tense up and hold our breath and put our shoulders up. And by, consciously stopping and taking a deep breath and lowering our shoulders, we can actually respond in a healthier way and give ourselves, 5 seconds to just reset our brains before we react. Way healthier response. There are some people that talk about, the 5 minutes of heavy breathing, but when you're in the heat of the moment, sometimes you just can't stop and take 5 minutes to have a deep breathing session. So what I've taught myself when I'm in the heat of the moment and something's really scary or maddening or upsetting, I say in my head, breathe, Karen, breathe, Karen, breathe, Karen, repeat it to myself inside my head. And it really helps. And I think the biggest thing for me was believing that I had the ability to get through whatever this was. And that came when my son was sick as, a newborn, and they told me he may never be able to walk or talk. I spent about 3 days crying about it, and then I went, that's not going to be my kid. And because I believed that, and then I put that belief in him, he's not that kid. He walks, he talks, he, is a normal functioning adult who just bought a house and drives, does everything, quote unquote, normal people do. So it's about reminding yourself, I think, that you've survived 100% of your hard days so far. So you can get through this one too. One of the biggest things is setting boundaries, which is a really, really hard thing for a lot of people. We overcommit ourselves, we say yes to everything, and we have to protect our energy, and we have to protect our time and our own mental well-being. And part of that, an extension of that, is focusing on what we want ourselves, not on what everybody else wants, not on what society's telling us to do or what success looks like to society, not what our family's telling us to do, not what some old programming you got years ago is telling you what to do, but think about what it is that you actually want in your life and then setting the boundaries to be able to make that happen. It's about, taking ownership of our path is what I like to say. And the last one I'll talk about today, in trying to respect our time, is about feeling all the feelings. A lot of people think resilience is about being tough and pushing your emotions aside, but it's not at all. It's about feeling the feelings. And in order to be able to process the feelings, you have to acknowledge them and you have to sit with them and then move past them, because pretending you're fine just makes it worse. Eventually it will blow up. If you keep pushing things down inside, it's going to explode eventually. And pretending it's fine isn't the same as healing. So in order to heal, you have to actually acknowledge, I'm scared, I'm upset. It's okay. I always say it's okay to not be okay. You just can't live there. So it's about feeling those feelings, acknowledging them, understanding that it is normal to be scared. It is normal to get upset when whatever that hard thing happens. It's normal to be upset. It doesn't make you weak. It actually makes you stronger to be able to feel those feelings and use your tools that you have inside of you to move past them.
Those are great tips. Thank you for sharing those. You've also started a self-love school. Can you talk about its purpose and why you started it?
I started it because it's what I needed. Many years ago, after that really hard divorce, when I found out what my husband was doing with a teenage girl, I went to a life coach and she asked me what I had been doing in my life to make all of these bad things happen. And I got really mad and thought, I didn't do anything. Like, these men abused me and, my family has always treated me badly. And she gave me a postcard, and I actually pass them out as stickers now. And she said, I want you to put this in your bathroom and look in the mirror every single day and say these words out loud to yourself. And it took me over 2 years to be able to do it. And the words are, I deeply and completely love myself. And in my interactions, especially with women, I find that most of us cannot say those words to ourselves and look in the mirror, say it and mean it. And I thought, after I started doing that, it changed my life. And my life, even with all these really hard things that have happened, is so much better now than it has ever been before. And I believe in my ability to do things way better than I did before. And I don't have those people in my life anymore because once I learned to love myself, I remembered that I deserved better, which I never thought that before. And I just really wanted to be able to share that. So I call it a school. It's not technically a school. It's a one-on-one coaching program, but it's really just to help women learn to love ourselves so that we can then help build our own lives better, be happier, be more successful, whatever success looks like to you. And that's really my goal behind it, is to help other women live amazing lives, even when life's really hard.
Do you ever have any men take your self-love school?
I have not. And I would love to work with a man. I really think our world would be a way better place if more men, sat down and thought about their feelings. And when we look at suicide statistics, most of them are middle-aged men. And I think we could really help the men in our lives to give them permission to not be the tough guy all the time.
That's very insightful. Why are resilient self-care and self-love so important?
Well, the most important part is you cannot pour from an empty cup. Period. Full stop. You can't. So you have to give yourself a foundation, and you have to take care of your own emotional needs and your mental needs and your physical energy in order to be able to live a fulfilling life. And, I think we often think about self-care as it has to be something big and extravagant, like a spa day or something that costs money, but it really doesn't have to be. It can be sitting down and resting without feeling guilty about it. which I know a lot of us, especially moms, have a problem with. It can be about walking away from toxic people. In my case, I had to walk away from my entire family because they were just really bringing me down. It's about saying no to something that doesn't serve you. Those are all acts of self-love. So it's about looking after ourselves, and then it makes it so much easier to look after everybody else. That 5 minutes you sit down and take a rest might give you enough energy to really do a better job at looking after whatever priorities you need to do than if you had pushed through and not taken that rest. Because sometimes we just need a little reset. And we need to remember that self-love isn't selfish. It allows us to be there fully for ourselves and to be there more fully for the people who rely on us. So I think you have to believe you're worthy of looking after yourself. And then you start to prioritize it.
So if you think about people in the workplace and maybe they have to deal with a toxic personality, or they're overstressed, or they manage a lot of people and so they have to deal with other people's issues, what advice would you give to them in terms of the messages of resilience and self-care that they could apply maybe in the moment, so to speak?
Well, that breathing, even saying it in your head, really helps when you're dealing with difficult people, because it gives you the ability to respond instead of reacting. So I think it's really important. And you can't do this all of the time, but if it's possible, I think we need to normalize saying, I need 15 minutes, and I'll get back to you on that, instead of dealing with it immediately. And that's when you can go and think about it with a clearer head. And I think that would really help in a lot of workplace situations, to give ourselves and our teams permission to step back for a minute, and instead of reacting immediately. And I know a lot of workplaces are push, results, but you get better results when you give people permission to look after themselves. And sometimes, even though you think something has to be done right now, it can wait 10 minutes. It's probably not going to sink the ship. Like I said, there are some instances where you really do have to deal with something immediately, but if it's possible, to step back. And communication is such a huge part in all of our workplaces. And there's so much, I use the word permission so much, but you have to give people permission to maybe not agree on things and it not be a bad thing, and be able to talk about it without it being a blame game or making someone feel bad because, they failed. Failure is normal. All of our decisions are not going to be right. The game is always changing, no matter what industry we're in. What happened today, if you use the same tactic tomorrow, it might not work. So I think we have to give ourselves permission to be flexible and to have real open conversations about how things make us feel and how to solve problems. And so it's all the same things. It's about, give yourself time to think about yourself, set boundaries with people, use your communication tools, and take those small minutes, even if it's only a minute and a half, to step away and refocus before you respond. It can really change the outcomes of a lot of things.
My next question is a carry-on, or it's tied to my last question, but it's, what key takeaways do you have for healthcare administrators who spend a lot of time taking care of and attending to others' needs?
I touched on them a bit, but again, the permission part. Give yourself permission to take care of yourself, because in a demanding job, you need to remember that you're not a machine, and that rest isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. So try to set boundaries around your time and energy. They are your best friend. Maybe it's you commit to not checking your emails all day, every day, reminding yourself that you do not have to be the fixer of all the problems for all the people. And I find that many of us do take on more than our job actually requires us to do. And that can be really draining of our energy. And again, those small moments of self-care make a really big difference, even if it's the deep breathing between a couple of meetings, if you can get out of the office for a 5-minute walk, even drinking enough water, we don't actually value enough sometimes, but just those things to keep our bodies healthy can really help keep ourselves regulated throughout the day. And one of the big things that I think is really important to know about resilience is it's not about carrying it all. It's about knowing what to let go of. So in any healthcare field, there's always more to do. There's always someone else who needs your help, but you have to be intentional about protecting your energy so that you can keep doing the work without sacrificing yourself in the process, because we only have so much capacity. And I know here in Canada, all of our healthcare sectors are understaffed and overworked right now, but we still have to look after ourselves somehow and advocate to our leaders to, get the people in that we need to help. That's a whole different conversation, of course, but yeah, you really have to look after yourself or you're never going to be able to look after all the other things.
I think these are invaluable pieces of advice, especially given in the US they're also struggling with, understaffing and overwork people. I understand you're working on a book that you're writing, actually your second or third book. Can you tell me about it?
Yeah. Yes, I am working on a book, and I keep changing the working title, but it's kind of a memoir. I call it a teaching memoir. So it's a lot about my story, which I've touched on little tidbits of it as we talk, and how I've gotten through it, and sharing the tools that I talk about to inspire people that no matter what they're going through, they're not alone. And I know through so many things that I've been through, I felt very alone and felt like nobody else was supporting me. And I had to learn to support myself and count on myself and not stress about the fact that nobody else was coming to my rescue. So I'm really diving into that and sharing stories and sharing kind of a friend of mine who's a legendary author. She calls them moments, but I've kind of written sort of little poems that I'm putting in throughout the book that are quite powerful. And I'm hoping to have it done this year. I'm hoping to have my first draft done by the end of March. That's my goal. So yeah, I can't wait to get that out to the world.
I look forward to reading it. If people want to get in touch with you, how do they contact you?
I am on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. If you just search at Karen Dean Speaks, you'll find my pages. And my website is KarenDeanSpeaks.com.
Well, thank you for joining me today, Karen. It's been lovely to talk to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast. To learn more about SROA, visit www.sroa.org.